My wife slept with her boss, suggested we make our marriage open, and then changed her mind when I fell in love with another woman. Hello everyone. I never thought I'd end up asking strangers on the internet for advice, but here I am. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only. I honestly thought we had a unique and wonderful relationship because of that. But it seems only I felt that way. Some time ago, my wife started working at a new company. At first, she struggled to fit in because she's always been shy, but after I encouraged her, she befriended a group of single women from work. Initially, I was happy she'd found friends, but then she started going out drinking and partying with them more often. I got worried about the changes in her behavior and tried talking to her about it, but I didn't want to restrict her either. It started affecting our relationship in bed. She was never the one to initiate intimacy, but with her constant outings, she was either too tired or not in the mood. At some point, a new manager joined their group, and from what I could tell, she and her friends really liked him. She started mentioning him casually, but it got to the point where she'd talk about how he solved all sorts of problems, not always work-related. I asked her why she was so impressed by this guy, but she brushed off my questions. On top of that, she started asking if I regretted not having experiences with other women. I said no, because she'd always been enough for me. I swear, for a moment, I saw a hint of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. She brought up the idea of an open marriage as a way to shake things up. I was shocked. It didn't sound like my wife at all. At first, I flat out refused and asked if this had anything to do with the new manager. She denied it but said she felt like she'd missed out on a lot and didn't want to lose me, calling it a safe option. I warned her she was playing with fire, but in the end, I reluctantly and naively agreed. We set some rules, the main one being no bringing other people into our home. So for a year, my wife went on dates and had casual hookups. As if I didn't see it coming, she ended up dating that manager. I went on a few dates myself but didn't go for one-night stands because it felt wrong to me. She'd occasionally ask if I was okay, but her behavior didn't change. At some point, I felt that pure, innocent love I had for her disappear, and it destroyed me inside. Eventually, I went on a date with an amazing woman who'd moved from South Korea. The conversation flowed easily. She was witty, and her smile made me forget everything. Naturally, it led to another date, and then we slept together. Honestly, I'd never had intimacy like that before. I didn't know a woman could be so attentive and make me feel so desired. At first, my wife thought it was cute, but after a few months, she started digging into what was going on with my lover. I pointed out that this was her idea and reminded her she was in a relationship with that manager I'd been worried about. She went quiet. It seemed like she wanted to say something but couldn't. She started coming home earlier to cook me dinner and clean the house. She'd show up at my work with lunch and even initiated intimacy herself. Honestly, if it weren't for her open marriage idea, which I'm partly to blame for agreeing to, this would have made me jump for joy. But I barely responded to her attempts at closeness, and when I did, it was half-hearted. Something in me had died toward her, and I could see she felt it too. I asked her why the sudden change and what had shifted. She said she wanted to show me how much she loved me and was happy with our family life. Holding back, I started laughing. I asked about her friends, her manager lover, and all her casual flings. She didn't answer and just went to bed crying that night. The next day, when I got home, she was waiting for me. She said she wanted to close the marriage, that the whole experience was a horrible mistake, that she regretted everything and wanted us to focus on our relationship again. I told her she needed to be honest with me and explain what pushed her into this decision in the first place. As expected, it was her group of friends who convinced her, inspired by their own escapades. When the manager showed up, he, to her surprise, supported that lifestyle. Apparently, it turned into an emotional affair, then became physical after our marriage opened. As if that made it any easier. She described it as a drunken thrill ride, exciting and exhilarating. Now she realized she needed to compare, that what we had was truly unique and special. But she felt she'd ruined our marriage and any chance of a life together. I told her I might never see her as my wife again, and she broke down sobbing. I just held her silently as she cried until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. Since then, she quit her job, cut all contact with her friends and the manager, and even said she'd spend the rest of her life making it up to me if I'd just let her be my wife again. But I haven't ended things with my lover yet. With my lover, I feel like a man, like I could move mountains. My wife hasn't made me feel that way in a long time. Truthfully, I don't know what to do. I'd love to bring back that special feeling if it's even possible, but my lover literally saved me when I was at my lowest. Please help me figure this out. I forgot to mention, we have our first family counseling session in a few hours. I don't know how it'll go. Edited, I didn't expect this much response. Thank you all for the support and advice. I'll definitely update you after our therapy session, but for now, I'll answer a few questions. First, my lover isn't married, but she knows about our open marriage. Second, my intentions about this marriage are unclear, mostly because as much as I love my wife, I can't trust her anymore. But I also can't just throw away our years together, which is why I agreed to family therapy, to see if I can come to some sensible decision and get out of this limbo. Third, I never demanded to see my wife's phone, because I didn't want to see real proof of her with another man. The mental images I conjured up were bad enough. Actual photos or anything like that would have destroyed me even more. Oh, I forgot to mention, this morning, when I got out of the shower, I saw my wife holding my phone, trembling silently as she read an incoming message. I just took the phone from her and said nothing. It was from my lover. Good morning, handsome. I slept in your shirt last night because I missed the times we go to bed and wake up together. I miss your morning kisses. It clearly hit her hard because she's been following me around ever since. Even when I went for a run, she came along. In all our years together, she's never run with me. I met my lover the night my wife was on another date. I was leaving a bookstore, where I'd been spending the evening since this whole thing started, when my then future lover was being harassed by a short, stocky guy yelling at her. When he grabbed her arm and roughly turned her around, I instinctively stepped in. I do judo, nothing fancy, but I couldn't hold him properly and accidentally dislocated his wrist. Turns out she'd gotten him fired for harassment, and he was furious. She insisted on buying me coffee as thanks, and I agreed. As for her reaction to the open marriage, she was hesitant at first. She didn't want to be a homewrecker, but when she learned about my wife's actions, she threw caution to the wind. I've got 2 stories I could tell my grandkids. I saved your grandma from a creep, and she fell into my arms. Or, your grandma once took a year off to sleep with a bunch of guys, and I, her husband, was apparently okay with it. So, I suggest you all leave your advice for me in the comments right now, and I'll move on to the update. Update 1. The therapist seemed nice and experienced to me. She came across as unbiased and genuinely wanting to help, though it was just our first session. My wife took the chance to spill the whole story. She admitted her friend group made her wonder if she'd missed out on life since she married her first guy and never had other experiences or lived like some of the amazing women around her. Mind you, most of them are divorced or single. The therapist pointed out that this often destructively impacts marriages. My wife seemed to agree, then added that after the new manager showed up, some friends egged her on to see where it could go, saying it was a chance to explore and discover herself. She said she felt guilty, so she didn't sleep with him right away. But one of the divorcees suggested the open marriage idea as a loophole, claiming some couples even grow stronger after it. So, she convinced me to open the marriage and dove into the adventure. It was intoxicating but meaningless, and she started questioning her motives. She said she saw the pain in my eyes, but convinced herself it was just a fling. She added she'd never forgive herself. She wanted a thrilling new experience, so the scale of it didn't hit her until she noticed changes in me. At first, she thought since I was dating too, I'd eventually adjust and things would be fine. But everything shifted when my lover became a steady part of my adventure. Apparently, I started smiling for no reason, my eyes lit up when I got a text, and I'd leave the room happily to take a call. She said it suddenly felt like a punch to the gut, and she started having panic attacks for no reason. She went to her friends for advice, but they said it was a normal husband reaction in such a setup. When the same divorcee who'd suggested all this said, "Looks like his lover's making him happy," it hit her. The realization that another woman, not her, was bringing me joy made her feel sick, even faint. She understood how absurd it all was, and begged them to help her win me back, but they just said, "If it's so hard, why'd you suggest opening the marriage?" That's when she realized these women were toxic and a threat to our marriage and our whole life, so she threw herself into getting me back. I didn't say much but told the therapist I still have a lover. The therapist said we won't find a resolution while my lover's in the picture and suggested another session in 2 days. She also noted that it's rare for people to stay with their first partner this long, and felt we could overcome any challenges. I suspect she wants to make us a success story. Edited, what I mean by, "My lover makes me feel like a man." When I have a tough day, I'm not met with cold indifference but a warm hug. She listens attentively. When I feel insecure, she convinces me nothing's out of reach. Most importantly, and this might sound sexist, sorry, she lets me be the man in the relationship. My lover believes women are meant to do what men can't. I think it's part of her culture. She's convinced men aren't as nurturing or compassionate as women, so a soft heart can tame a raging volcano. Some Korean proverb. She thinks she should take charge in the bedroom and make intimacy exciting but never belittle me or invade areas where I need space. She believes men have fewer needs than women, and if those are met, a man will move mountains for a woman. She's all for equal pay and mutual respect, but not the extremes you see in modern society. As I said, it might seem sexist, but it's likely just an East-West cultural difference. Update 2. I've moved into an apartment owned by my brother, who's renting it to me for next to nothing. He offered to let me stay for free, but I refused. Now, a bit about what I've learned regarding my wife's behavior and something nasty about her manager. At the second counseling session, I asked some questions you all suggested. First, I asked if she was sure there was no physical intimacy before the marriage opened. She looked down and begged me not to make her say it, because once she did, everything would collapse. I insisted, and she admitted there was no direct contact, but they'd pleasured themselves in front of each other. He convinced her that since it wasn't full-on intimacy, it technically wasn't cheating, just enjoying each other's beauty. I was stunned. She started trembling and breathing heavily, snot running from her nose as she sobbed and begged for forgiveness. Even the therapist looked shocked, her face showing disbelief. My wife dropped to her knees, grabbed my legs, and pleaded for me to forgive her. Second, I asked what changed her view of the manager. She said after she started pulling away from her friend group, he treated her differently too. One day, leaving a meeting, she overheard him talking about her to another male colleague as she passed his office. He said he was surprised how easy it was to hook her, and that she was proof still waters run deep. When the colleague asked if he really liked her, he said she was just a fun distraction, and he had no intention of leaving his fiancée. He added that it was just a way to blow off steam because the only woman who truly understood him was his fiancée, and he wasn't breaking up with her. He even said he felt sorry for me, but strike while the iron's hot, realizing she was just a piece of meat to him. Plus, she betrayed me for a cheap thrill. She said she didn't do anything irreparable then. She ran out of the office to the parking lot and threw up. Her first thought was, "What have I done? Please forgive me. I'm so guilty." Then I asked if she loved him, and when she stopped loving me. Through tears, she looked me in the eyes and said she never stopped loving me, which honestly made me feel worse. She said he was just something different. She thought it was love, but now she saw how stupid it was. She gripped my hand with surprising strength and said she knew she'd messed up but missed us and what we had before all this. She suggested we run away somewhere and start fresh, just the two of us, like it was meant to be. I said it wouldn't be fair to my lover and that I needed time away from her, my wife, to process it all. She had a breakdown, crying harder, saying incoherent things, hugging me like I was about to vanish. It took a while for the therapist and me to calm her down. The therapist supported my idea that living apart might help us all clear our heads. Too bad the story doesn't end there. Back home, as I started packing, her laptop rang with a video call from one of her ex-friends, who was in tears. After my wife left the job, this friend hooked up with the manager, had a pregnancy scare, and he flipped out. Turns out she had a boyfriend she saw a future with but got curious about an affair. Funny how patterns emerge. The boyfriend found out from their messages about the pregnancy scare, where the manager accused her of trying to trap him with a kid. He dumped her, and in desperation, she called my wife, thinking she'd saved our marriage and wanting advice. I turned and left. I've been at my brother's place since. Thanks again for all the advice. Update 3. First off, thank you to everyone who took the time to write, share helpful advice, similar life stories, or just offer to listen. It means a lot to me. A lot has happened already. The ex-friend who had the pregnancy scare was actually pregnant, but lost it due to stress. Lost her boyfriend and faced public humiliation over the affair, leading to a miscarriage. She went ballistic and decided to get revenge on the manager. She took all the evidence to HR, not just about him. I got curious about his fiancée and found her on Facebook. She seems like a sweet small-town girl, a teacher for kids with special needs, loves home and family stuff. My first thought was, why would he even bother cheating when he has someone like her? Honestly, it's baffling why guys like him marry women like her, one of life's biggest mysteries. This ex-friend reached out to me. She needed my side of the story because she was gathering evidence against the manager and wanted to discuss it in person. When I saw her face, I could tell she was broken, dark circles under her eyes, bloodshot whites, clearly not sleeping, haunted by heavy thoughts. She thanked me for meeting her and immediately apologized for her role in my wife's escapade. She talked to my wife and learned I'd moved out. She didn't try to shift blame and wanted to take responsibility, which is why she asked to meet. I thanked her for her honesty, but asked why she was willing to go so far. She said losing her baby and her partner completely changed her. She can't look in the mirror without hating herself and can't sleep because she keeps seeing her ex's face when he found out. She clearly loathes herself, and meeting me was almost a form of punishment for her. She said since workplace relationships violate policy, especially with him in a managerial role, he'll likely be fired and possibly blacklisted from the industry. She might face consequences too, and she's accepted that. After I shared my part of the story, she apologized again and left. I needed to grab some stuff from the old house, and picked a time I thought my wife wouldn't be there, but she was. I was surprised to see she'd laid out nearly all our wedding photos and others on the coffee table. When she noticed me, I saw she was crying. She tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her away. She offered me lunch, but I said I wasn't hungry and wouldn't stay long, just needed to pick up a few things. She said she wanted to show me something, pulled out her phone, and showed me a message she'd gotten 2 days ago from her ex-manager. He was cursing her out. It was a new number since she'd blocked his old one. Turns out my wife helped that ex-friend expose him, and he was furious. She said they figured revealing the truth might give us a chance to save our marriage. I said I was glad she was brave, but it doesn't change what's happening between us, and I added that I'm stopping family therapy to do individual sessions instead. She cried quietly and said she understood. I feel like I should have felt some joy at her actions or anger that she did it so late, but I feel nothing toward her, just numbness. I know that's not normal, which is why I want to work through it in individual therapy, not family sessions. On my brother's advice, I've already seen a divorce lawyer, just to be prepared for any outcome. Right now, I'm not eager to fight for this marriage, and my wife seems to sense it. Before I left, she tried initiating intimacy again. When I refused, she started yelling, asking what my lover gives me that she can't, how she's better than her, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, and said she'd do anything I wanted. I shook my head and said if she still didn't get it after everything, then I understood everything and I left. Thanks again for all the help.